Hey everyone, what's up? It's Joshua here from Alternative Brewing, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Flair Pro 2 Signature Espresso Maker. Now this is Flair's leading manual espresso maker in a range of lever brewers that are all designed to produce the best quality in espresso brewing, whilst being really portable, and you can be enjoying an amazing espresso literally anywhere, so long as you have hot water and ground coffee. And the Flair Pro 2 exhibits very durable steel construction of its main body, as well as in the portafilter with a single flow spout attachment, the shower screen and the brew head, as well as a two-piece drip tray and the tamp that comes along with it. You'll also get a dosing cup and a dosing funnel too. Now it can easily achieve 9 bars of pressure or more with the reliable pressure gauge that comes standard on the Flair Pro 2. So repeatability of espresso brewing is absolutely possible, and it comes in 3 colors of the chrome, black and white. So if you're looking to make espresso literally anywhere at a fraction of the cost of buying an espresso machine, you can shop the full range of Flair products in this link up above. So the Flair Pro 2, with all its accessories, travels super easy in a very durable EVA carry case with foam padding to protect the brewer in transit. Assembling the Flair is done by screwing in the 1 bolt to attach the lever arm to the base, and then everything else either sits on this or is used as an accessory in the workflow whilst brewing. Now I'd have to say that over a few weeks of using the Flair Pro 2 as my morning coffee, it's been a really enjoyable experience. And comparing it to its predecessors within the Flair range, there are a few extra upgrades on the Flair Pro 2, like the silicone handle on the grip, the removable single flow spout, although I do wish this was a double spout so I could split my shots, and the bottomless portafilter for those amazing visuals on the extraction that improve upon the whole user experience of espresso brewing and certainly make the workflow of brewing a little easier. And for the most part, it isn't all that much time spent brewing on the Flair compared to any other style of manually brewing coffee. But compared to using a regular espresso machine, well, it is going to look fiddly and perhaps a little time consuming. But you do have to remember that the Flair Pro 2 will pack into its own suitcase and stores away easily, but still brews a real espresso without electricity, versus that espresso machine that's on the bench plugged in 24/7 and doesn't move. So with all that being said, let's just dive straight in now and brew an espresso on the Flair Pro 2. So first up, we're going to be preheating the brew head and the cup, and this is very important to minimize any temperature loss during the brewing process. Now the dosing cup upside down seconds as a resetting tool for the piston within the brew head. So press the piston all the way down on top of the dosing cup, then use that silicone cap under the brew head, which makes it nice and watertight. So you can fill up that brew chamber with boiling water to get it nice and hot. And then we're just going to empty that out right before we brew. Next, weigh your coffee out, and I'm using a 20-gram dose here, but you can brew with a dose as low as 16 grams all the way up to 24 grams. And that means there is a lot of play in terms of the recipes and the ratios that you can achieve. And to begin brewing great tasting espresso using the Flair Pro 2, there lies in some part responsibility that you do want to be using an espresso focused grinder for this style of brewing, as it's not going to bode well with either a small hand grinder or a blade grinder. So you want to use those coffee grounds that are reliable for espresso brewing, or you never will achieve that desired pressure that makes crema or that richness in flavor that's expected from espresso brewing otherwise. So with it ground to an espresso grind, you may discover a period of dialing into the appropriate grind size too. So it took me 2 shots to get the grind settings right, and still every new bag of coffee there's a slight adjustment of those grind settings still. But if you're a keen brewer, then adapting either your pre-infusion or the pressure whilst brewing on the fly can save a shot of espresso, so you're not completely wasting good coffee. And this attribute to grinding for espresso is pretty well standard practice across all espresso brewing, though you do find a steeper learning curve in using a manual brewer like the Flair, and equally so, the very fact that you have control over all of these parameters, and call me a control freak, is exactly why manually brewing a delicious espresso can be so much more satisfying than just pushing a button. So adding the grounds to the portafilter is painless using the dosing funnel provided, with a few taps to settle and distribute the grounds before using that tamp to finish it off. And the steel tamper Flair include is the perfect fit all the way to the edges of the portafilter and does a superb job of tamping. Although the portafilter itself is tapered, so if you do use a dose lower than 16 grams, it won't actually tamp any further down. Next, place the shower screen on top of the tamped coffee, and I recommend using the large holes facing upwards here. Once that's done, empty out the water from your brew head carefully and attach it to the portafilter. Now there are a few ways you can approach adding the brew water in this next step, and I like to worry less about the volume during brewing, so I weigh the water out into the brew head prior to brewing and then don't really need to worry about that later. So long as I get that approximate yield, I'm going for a double shot of espresso of 45 grams out, and a couple of grams either side. I'm going to be pretty happy with that. So I'm going to be adding that amount plus the weight of the coffee I'm using to the brew head. So all up 65 grams of water. As I've discovered using the Flair, the grounds soak up about 1 gram of water per gram of coffee as a rule. But you can always add upwards of 75 grams into the brew head for larger brew ratios of a 1:3 if you're using perhaps a lighter roasted coffee. So you can just totally add all the water to the brew head and then measure out your espressos as you're brewing too, as the drip tray on the Flair Pro is a good size to fit a set of Acacia Luna scales at 10.5 centimeters across. This way you can measure out your yield and watch your brew time simultaneously. Now, placing the brew head into the holder, add the plunger with the pressure gauge on top. And don't forget to set your cup underneath before beginning to lower the lever. The pressure gauge is marked clearly, so you're able to hold the pressure steady where you want it. And the gauge itself is also able to be twisted into a better angle depending on your viewpoint. Now this is a two-handed job, and pressing down on the lever, I found holding the base with one hand and then holding the lever with the other, and then with any little bit of leverage you can gain on the Flair Pro will limit the exertion required. Because it's definitely not effortless, and you want to put in the effort to keep the extraction at a consistent high pressure for the best results. Now, pre-infusion begins without question when you feel some resistance in the lever, and you could go straight out of the gates here to 9 bars of pressure, but I've discovered between different coffee blends, origins and roasters, a consistent method for brewing prior to being dialed in perfectly is a steady ramp up of pressure. And this lets some drips down the sides of the basket, but I slow down my press if it's too quick a flow, and then allow the full face of the naked filter to be covered in espresso before a final press towards 9 bars of pressure. And this forms a nice steady single stream and flow that is more consistent throughout a majority of the extraction. What you do want to avoid is sprites or channeling, and these are little streams of water that manage to cut through the ground coffee, spurting out the sides of the basket and add nothing to the extraction or the end cup. And you can improve on these with further distribution or coarsening up your grind a little. Now I find just releasing the pressure a little and then increasing it again does help mitigate these issues, and then you can complete a shot without too much problem. My shots on average run for about 40 seconds to a minute 15, which might seem long, but including the pre-infusion time and the ramp down of pressures, I find these slower shots achieve a better result overall. And the results really speak for themselves. It's absolutely the best espresso I've enjoyed from a manual espresso machine. Now, the texture, this is one thing I find just lacks that tiny little bit, but maybe this has more to do with my recipe than it does the brewer. And overall, the crema and certainly that depth of flavor is easy to obtain and is comparable to an espresso machine. So now you can add some milk to this for a flat white or a latte, it's gonna be amazing. Add some hot water to it for a long black, or like me, I'm gonna be drinking it straight, as it really is that cafe quality style espresso. And to make another shot from here, the silicone wrapped metal parts make it easy to handle straight after brewing. And I'm resetting my brew head and then preheating it again quickly, knocking out my portafilter and giving that a quick rinse and wipe down to repeat the whole process. And there's really not a lot to do with all those extra accessories to make a second shot fairly quickly, but you can always purchase a second brew head to go back to back even faster, and you can find that in the link up above. Now I love the low maintenance of the Flair Pro 2, as your cleaning routine between shots pretty well makes up the maintenance of the Flair altogether. There's nothing really more to do but keep everything nice and clean and dry. You may need to replace some seals over time, but even with daily use, they're likely to last a very long time. and that's the Flair Pro 2 manual espresso maker for you. It's really well designed to be durable for that ideal portable brewing device, and it's going to be making espressos as good as any machine, with the freedom to play around with those extraction parameters like temperature, pressure, and your dose quite easily to get the best from your coffee. And finally, considering the price difference of the Flair versus any other manual brewer, well, it's going to be expensive, but compare it to a relative product that makes similar quality espressos and you're going to be paying 2 or 3 times as much, and herein lies the value of the Flair Pro 2. So if you have any questions on this product, then throw them in the comments section down below and we'll get straight back to you. Don't forget to hit that little bell icon on your screen, and then that way you stay notified when we bring out new videos just like this every week. If you've enjoyed this video, hit your thumbs up. That's really good. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.